Can you hear me at the back?
Aye.
Good, okay. Thanks for the introduction and thank you for welcoming me along. I was actually raised in Dumbarton for some 20 years, so it's nice to be back. And this story basically came out of an experience that I had when I was a child, growing up in Bellsmire, which is actually featured in tonight's magazine. So this is called A Murder of Crows. I'll give you a quick introduction of the book, then an introduction to the extract, and then I'll read a short extract for you. So, A Murder of Crows. The most violent thunderstorm in living memory occurs above a sleepy village on the west coast of Scotland. A young couple take shelter in the woods, never to be seen again. DCI Jack Russell is brought in to investigate. Nearing retirement, he agrees to undertake one last case, which he believes will be solved as a matter of routine. But what Jack discovers in the forest leads him to the conclusion that he is following in the footsteps of a psychopath who is just getting started. Jack is flung headlong into a race against time to prevent the evolution of a serial killer. And this is an introduction to the chapter. So this part of the story takes place quite early on in the book. Concerns a character called Alice Smith, who is suffering from an early onset of dementia. She lives alone mostly and has a carer called Helen. Her son Alistair and his girlfriend have both disappeared, but she doesn't know this yet. Something the boy said. What was it he said? Alice could not remember. And yet she recalled everything else about that day. The blazing sunshine, the scent of rosemary in her garden, the way the field of rapeseed undulated in the breeze around the scarecrow that stood in the centre. But she could not for the life of her remember what the little boy had said. She could picture his face, wide-eyed and stark, could hear his tone of voice, awed, hushed. And it was this distinct note that haunted her, for he had seemed frightened, so petrified he could barely speak. And yet there had been nothing to explain his plight. It was just another day, another long hot summer in the village of Hobbs Bray, and she had been in the field, the one that stood below her house, the one that no longer got used, so it was overgrown, unkempt, just like her garden. A place of memories, mostly happy, sometimes sad, and in this case, just plain odd. What did he say? Alice could see the boy's face. His stare seemed indicative of a knowledge way beyond his years, but she still could not remember his words. She blinked and realised with a start that she was in the bathroom. How did I get here? Her breathing was laboured. I must have come up the stairs, she thought to herself. Perplexed, she tried to focus by training her eyes on the mirror in front of her. The lost look that she now beheld made her stomach lurch at the thought that she had just suffered another fugue. And as always, this would be followed by the fear of the knowledge that her mind had been hijacked yet again. The reflection that looked back at her from the mirror was an increasingly vulnerable one. The light seemed to pass so quickly into dark and back again. It was difficult to tell one day from the other. And yet every now and then Alice had a moment of clarity, and she remembered things clearly, like the way her husband used to nod his head slightly when he talked, or the sound of the doorbell before it broke, or an ominous message from a little boy. That single note of disquiet resonated inside her. What did the boy say? It made her angry, frustrated. Blinking furiously, she heard the sound of seagulls crying in the distance, felt the wind billow around her slight frame, teasing at the corners of her faded white dress. She was outside. Her heart thudded faster now, and she looked around, confused, searching for something tangible, something to cling on to. She heard something behind her and spun round. Nothing there. The light had changed. Almost sunset, she thought. Where did the rest of the day go? She saw something just then. A basket sitting on its side on the broken paving stones, and a large mound of freshly dug earth. She frantically scanned the garden for evidence, desperately trying to piece the visual clues together. Was I in the garden digging? Have I just buried something? Fearfully, she looked around. The wind moaned through the treetops, and she felt a chill as she recalled the boy's timid face, his dark brown eyes seeing something that she could not even begin to fathom. And she realised now that they were the same, for she too was in the grip of fear, in constant dread of losing her memory and by default her entire mind. Her hold on reality was slipping as fast as the sun was now sinking below the horizon, the lengthening shadows encroaching like predatory fingers around her frightened, widowed heart. And suddenly she remembered. Sunshine, rosemary, the field of rapeseed, and the scarecrow at the centre of it all. It came to her in a flash, took her breath away. It was the very same day we built the scarecrow. How could I have forgotten? She gasped. Those words, he said them. It happened here on this very spot. And she could see it now as clearly as if it was yesterday. She had just returned from the field. The sun was setting then as it was now, and Alice had taken his hand, but he wrenched it free with such ferocity that she had turned to him and was about to ask what was wrong, when she saw that he looked terrified. She wondered aghast at why she hadn't remembered it before. That frozen look on his little face, and those words that haunted her even now. Those three seemingly insignificant words, and the way he'd said them. Something is coming.